I should have known karma would catch up with me eventually. Sitting here in my cramped studio apartment in Bakersfield, watching the rain streak down windows that haven't been cleaned in months, I can't stop thinking about how I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. And worse, how I created the very monster that would eventually destroy me right back. 23 years. That's how long it's been since I cheated on Brendan Holbrook during my engineering internship. 23 years since I took a sweet, devoted computer science major who worshipped the ground I walked on and turned him into something else entirely. Something I never saw coming. But let me start at the beginning. Let me tell you how one stupid decision set off a chain reaction that would define the rest of both our lives. Oklahoma State University, 1991. I was 21, a junior in engineering, and I thought I had the world figured out. Brendan was 19, this skinny sophomore with thick glasses and an unfortunate tendency to wear the same 3 hoodies in rotation. We met in Economics 201, where he always sat in the 3rd row, always had the right answers, always looked at me like I was some kind of goddess who'd descended from Mount Olympus to grace his mundane existence. He wasn't my type, not even close. I was dating guys like Tyler Braxton, whose dad owned half the oil wells in Tulsa, and Jackson Rivera, who drove a Porsche and could get us into any club in Oklahoma City. These were men who made other girls jealous, who commanded attention when they walked into a room, who knew exactly how to make a woman feel desired. Brendan? Brendan was safe, predictable. He'd text me asking if I wanted to study together, and I'd make excuses. He'd invite me to movies, and I'd claim I had plans. Once, he even asked me to his fraternity formal. I actually felt bad turning him down, so I made up some story about visiting my sick grandmother that weekend. The truth was simpler and crueler. Brendan Holbrook was invisible to me. Just another nice guy who didn't understand that being smart and kind wasn't enough. Not for Haley Fitzgerald, not when I had options. But then something changed second semester of my junior year. Tyler had cheated on me with some freshmen, Jackson had ghosted me after I'd refused to sleep with him on the second date, and I was tired of the games, tired of fighting for the attention of guys who treated me like I was replaceable. That's when I really noticed Brendan for the first time. He was still sending those sweet texts, still saving me a seat in class, still looking at me with those puppy dog eyes behind his thick frames. And suddenly that devotion didn't seem so pathetic. It seemed useful. I started small. A smile here, a touch on the arm there. "Hey, Brendan, maybe we could study together after all?" The way his face lit up should have warned me that I was playing with fire, but I was 21 and thought I understood men. Within 2 weeks, we were dating exclusively. Within a month, we were saying, "I love you." Looking back, I know he meant it. Me, I meant that I loved how he made me feel. Cherished. Prioritized. Important in a way Tyler and Jackson never made me feel. Brendan wasn't exciting, but he was devoted. He remembered how I took my coffee, noticed when I changed my hair, actually listened when I complained about my classes. He was genuinely happy just to be with me, and that kind of worship was intoxicating for a girl who'd spent years chasing after guys who barely noticed her. Our relationship was comfortable. The sex was fine, not mind-blowing, but he was so eager to please, so grateful for every moment of intimacy. I told him he was my 3rd partner. He told me I was his 4th. We were both lying, though I wouldn't find out about his lie until much later. A year passed. Brendan was everything a girl was supposed to want in a boyfriend. Loyal, attentive, planning our future together with the kind of certainty that should have been romantic, but mostly just felt suffocating. He talked about marriage after graduation, about the life we'd build together, about how he'd take care of me. I smiled and nodded and felt absolutely nothing. Then came the internship that changed everything. Summer between my junior and senior year, I landed a position at Hartwell Engineering in Lawton, about 80 miles from campus. It was only for 3 months, and Brendan was so supportive. "This is great for your career, babe. We can handle 3 months. I'll visit every weekend." And he did. Every Friday night, he'd make that drive to spend the weekend with me in my tiny intern housing. He'd bring me flowers from the grocery store, takeout from my favorite places back home, little gifts that showed he was thinking of me. It should have been sweet. Instead, it felt like being slowly suffocated by a pillow made of good intentions. Meanwhile, at Hartwell Engineering, I was finally around real men. Engineers with careers, confidence, and the kind of masculine energy that Brendan, for all his sweetness, completely lacked. Graham Mitchell was 32, a senior engineer who'd been assigned as my mentor. Tall, broad-shouldered, with just enough gray at his temples to look distinguished. He wore suits that actually fit, drove a BMW, and when he explained complex engineering concepts, he didn't talk down to me like the professors at school. It started innocently. Coffee breaks that ran a little long. Lunch meetings that felt more like dates. The way he'd stand just a little too close when reviewing my work. How his hand would brush mine when passing documents. I knew what was happening. I wasn't some naive little girl. The thing was, I wanted it to happen. 6 weeks into my internship, we were working late on a project deadline. The office was empty except for us, and the tension that had been building finally snapped. One moment we were discussing load calculations, the next his mouth was on mine, and I was pulling him closer instead of pushing him away. I won't pretend Graham seduced me. I was a willing participant. More than willing, I was eager. After a year of Brendan's puppy love routine, being with a real man who knew what he wanted and took it was thrilling. Graham didn't ask permission for every touch, didn't thank me afterwards like I'd done him some great favor, didn't cuddle afterward and talk about our feelings. It was exactly what I'd been missing. We slept together 3 more times over the next 2 weeks. Quick encounters in his office after hours, once in his car in the parking garage. He made it clear this was just fun, that he had no intention of leaving his wife. I made it equally clear that I was fine with that arrangement. But then the guilt started creeping in. Not because I loved Brendan. I'd finally admitted to myself that I didn't, and probably never had. The guilt came from knowing how this would destroy him. For all my frustration with his neediness, he didn't deserve this. So I decided to tell him. Or at least that's what I told myself. Looking back, I think I wanted to hurt him. I wanted to push him away so I wouldn't have to be the bad guy who broke up with him for no reason. If he left me because I cheated, well, that was his choice, right? The weekend after my last encounter with Graham, Brendan made his usual Friday night drive down. He brought Chinese food and a stupid stuffed animal he'd won at some campus carnival. We were eating dinner when I started crying. "What's wrong?" he asked, immediately concerned. "Did something happen at work?" "I slept with someone else," I blurted out. The way his face changed is burned into my memory forever, from concern to confusion to this horrible, crushing realization. He set down his chopsticks very carefully, like they might shatter if he moved too fast. "What?" he whispered. So I told him. Not everything. I made it sound like a one-time mistake, a moment of weakness. I cried harder, apologizing over and over, telling him it meant nothing, that I loved him, that it would never happen again. He cried too. The computer science major, who was going to conquer Silicon Valley someday, sat there and sobbed like a child, asked me why, asked me what he'd done wrong, asked me if it was because he wasn't good enough. That last question should have been my wake-up call. The fact that his first instinct was to blame himself for my betrayal should have shown me exactly what kind of person I was. Instead, I let him comfort me. Let him hold me while I cried about how guilty I felt. Let him tell me we could work through this. We spent that whole weekend talking, crying, and yes, having desperate, sad sex that felt more like grief than passion. By Sunday night when he left, we'd decided to try again. He forgave me with a generosity I didn't deserve, and I promised to be better. I meant it at the time, or thought I did. The rest of my internship passed without incident. Graham acted like nothing had happened, which was fine by me. I threw myself into being the perfect girlfriend for Brendan, trying to make up for what I'd done: extra affectionate texts, enthusiastic responses to his calls, planning special things for his visits. But something had changed in him. The puppy dog eyes were still there, but now they held wariness too. He'd ask more questions about my days, about who I was spending time with. Not accusatory, just careful, like he was gathering data. 3 weeks after I confessed, something shifted again. Brendan seemed different during his visit, more confident somehow, more assertive. When we went out to dinner, he didn't ask me where I wanted to go. He just made reservations. When we had sex, he didn't spend 20 minutes making sure I was ready. He just took what he wanted, and surprisingly, it was the best sex we'd ever had. "You seem different," I told him that Sunday morning. He looked at me for a long moment, then smiled, but it wasn't his usual eager smile. This one had an edge to it. "Just trying to be what you need," he said. I should have paid more attention to that comment, should have recognized the warning in it, but I was just relieved that he seemed to be moving past my betrayal, becoming more like the kind of man I was actually attracted to. My internship ended and I moved back to campus for senior year. Brendan and I picked up where we'd left off, except everything was different now. He was less available, claiming he needed to focus on his coding projects. When we did see each other, he was charming but distant. The constant texts stopped. The flowers disappeared. And stupidly, I found myself wanting his attention more than ever. "Is everything okay?" I asked one night after he'd been particularly aloof. "Everything's great," he said, not looking up from his laptop. "Why?" "You just seem distant." He finally looked at me, and there was something in his eyes I didn't recognize. "Just giving you space," he said. "Isn't that what you wanted?" It was, but it wasn't. I wanted him to chase me, not the other way around. This new dynamic made me uncomfortable in ways I couldn't articulate. Meanwhile, his friend group seemed to be expanding. He was going to more parties, always inviting me, but not seeming to care if I came or not. Girls started noticing him. Had they always noticed him? His acne had cleared up. He'd started working out, gotten contacts instead of those thick glasses. When had all this happened? 6 months into senior year, I was at a party with my girlfriends when I spotted Brendan across the room. He was talking to Ashley Chen, this gorgeous sophomore who was definitely out of his league. Or at least, she would have been out of the old Brendan's league. This Brendan had her laughing, touching his arm, looking at him the way girls used to look at Tyler Braxton. I abandoned my friends and walked over. "Hey, babe," I said, sliding my arm through his. "Oh, hey, Haley," he said casually. "You know Ashley, right?" I didn't, but I pretended I did. We made small talk for a few minutes before Ashley excused herself, but not before giving Brendan a look that made my stomach clench. "She seems friendly," I said once she was gone. "Yeah, she's cool," Brendan replied. "Hey, I'm going to grab another beer." "You good?" And then he just walked away. Left me standing there like I was nobody special. The old Brendan would never have done that. Over the next few months, I watched my devoted boyfriend transform into someone I didn't recognize. He was still technically faithful, I think, but he'd developed this magnetism that drew women to him. The computer science nerd who used to worship me was suddenly the guy everyone wanted to talk to at parties. And the worst part? The more distant he became, the more I wanted him. For the first time in our relationship, I was the one sending multiple texts. I was the one suggesting date nights. I was the one trying to lock down his weekend plans. "Want to come to my sorority formal?" I asked in April. "Can't," he said without looking up from his coding. "Already have plans." "What plans?" He shrugged. "Just hanging with some people." Some people. The vagueness of it made me crazy. The old Brendan would have told me every detail, probably asked permission to go. This Brendan didn't seem to care if I knew or not. I found out later he'd gone to a different formal, with Ashley Chen. "We're not exclusive or anything," my friend Brittany told me carefully. But they looked pretty cozy. I confronted him that night, showing up at his apartment unannounced. Were you at Sigma Chi's formal with Ashley? He looked up from his computer, completely calm. Yeah, she asked me to go as friends. Friends don't slow dance the way Brittany said you two were dancing. For the first time in months, I saw a flash of the old Brendan, that hurt, vulnerable look he'd had when I'd told him about Graham. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by that new coldness. Huh, he said. Must be hard wondering what your partner is doing with someone else. Wondering if just friends really means just friends. That must really suck. The words hit like a slap. He was throwing my betrayal back in my face, and the worst part was, I deserved it. That's different, I said weakly. Is it? He turned back to his computer. Look, Ashley and I are just friends. You can believe me or not. I've got work to do. I stood there for a moment, waiting for him to apologize, to reassure me, to be the Brendan who would have done anything to make me feel secure. But he just kept typing, and eventually I left. We limped along until graduation. I kept trying to get back what we'd had in the beginning, or rather, to get him to go back to worshiping me while I decided if I wanted him. He kept pulling further away, becoming more successful, more confident, more attractive to everyone, but seemingly indifferent to me. The breakup, when it finally came, was almost anticlimactic. 2 weeks after graduation, he invited me to coffee. Public place, neutral ground, I should have known. I got a job offer in Austin, he said without preamble. I'm moving next week. What? When were you going to tell me? I'm telling you now. He sipped his coffee calmly. Look, Haley, we both know this isn't working. It hasn't been working for a while. I think it's better if we just end things cleanly. Because of Ashley? I demanded. No, because of us. Because I can't trust you and you can't stand that I'm not your lapdog anymore. The words were harsh, but his tone was almost gentle. We bring out the worst in each other. So that's it? 2.5 years and you're just done? He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for just a moment I saw all the pain I'd caused him. Yeah, he said quietly. I'm done. He paid for the coffee and left. No dramatic scene, no begging for another chance. Just done. I found out later he'd been seeing Ashley for the last month of school. Not seriously, but enough. The sweet, devoted boy who'd cried in my arms about my betrayal had learned to play the game I'd taught him. I told myself I was fine. Told myself Brendan had been a placeholder anyway, that I was free to find someone better. I moved to Oklahoma City, threw myself into my engineering career, dated guys who were everything Brendan wasn't. Confident, experienced, dominant. Except none of them looked at me the way Brendan had. None of them remembered my coffee order or noticed when I was having a bad day. They were fun, exciting, but they were also selfish in ways I'd never realized Brendan wasn't. 5 years passed. I was 27, working for a good firm, but somehow unsatisfied with everything. My college friends were getting married, and I was still chasing the high of being with men who didn't really care about me. That's when I met Robert. Nice guy, engineer, stable and devoted. He reminded me of Brendan, or rather, of the Brendan I'd first started dating. Worshipful, eager to please, planning our future together before I'd even decided if I wanted a second date. I married him. Not because I loved him, but because I was tired of being alone, and he offered the kind of security I'd started to crave. I told myself I was being practical, that love was overrated, that I could learn to appreciate his devotion. For a while it worked. Robert gave me everything: the house in Edmond, the expensive gym membership, the freedom to quit my job and teach fitness classes part-time. He supported my marathon hobby, cheered at every race, never complained when I spent more time training than with him. But it was Brendan all over again. The same suffocating devotion, the same puppy dog eagerness, the same gratitude for basic affection. And just like with Brendan, I started feeling trapped. That's when I met Derek at the gym. Another runner, another confident man who knew what he wanted. The cycle repeated itself with depressing predictability. Coffee after runs became lunch, became afternoon training sessions at his apartment. This time I didn't feel guilty, I felt entitled. Robert was nice, but nice was boring. Nice didn't make my heart race. Nice didn't make me feel alive. The affair with Derek lasted 6 months before I decided to leave Robert. I actually called Brendan to tell him, some twisted need to prove that I'd evolved, that I was choosing passion over security this time. Hello? His voice was deeper than I remembered. Brendan? It's Haley. A pause. Haley? Wow, it's been, 5 years? 6, actually. Listen, I know this is weird, but I wanted to tell you something. I'm leaving my husband. For someone else. Someone who makes me feel the way you never could. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Why are you telling me this? He finally asked. I don't know. I guess I wanted you to know that I figured it out. What I really want. That I'm not settling anymore. He laughed then, but it wasn't cruel. Just tired. Haley, I'm happy. Really happy. I'm engaged to an incredible woman who actually loves me. We're building a life together based on trust and respect. I haven't thought about you in years. The words stung more than they should have. But I wanted you to know. I don't care, he interrupted gently. I genuinely don't care who you're with or why. I hope you find whatever you're looking for, but please don't contact me again. He hung up, and I sat there holding the phone, realizing that I'd wanted him to care. Wanted him to be hurt that I was choosing someone else. Wanted to still have that power over him. But I didn't. I was nothing to him now, just a mistake he'd learned from. The divorce from Robert was messy. Turns out Derek wasn't interested in a real relationship, just the thrill of sleeping with a married woman. Once I was available, he ghosted me within a month. I was 33, divorced, and starting over. Again. The patterns kept repeating. Nice guys who bored me, exciting guys who used me. It was a rinse and repeat cycle of my own making. I watched my friends build stable marriages while I chased something I couldn't even define. Passion? Excitement? Or just the validation of being wanted by men who didn't really want me? I'm 44 now. Never remarried, though I've had a dozen relationships that followed the same script. I teach spin classes at a gym in Bakersfield, not exactly where I thought I'd end up with my engineering degree. My apartment is nice enough, but it's nothing like the house Robert bought us. I found Brendan on LinkedIn last month. Couldn't help myself. He's a VP at a tech company in Austin, married to a pediatrician. They have 3 kids and a house that probably costs more than I'll make in a lifetime. His profile picture shows him at some charity gala, fit and successful, with his wife looking at him the way I never did, the way he used to look at me. I've thought a lot about that summer internship, about Graham Mitchell and the choice I made. One afternoon of excitement that set off a chain reaction I'm still living with 23 years later. If I'd just been satisfied with Brendan's devotion, would I be in that picture instead? Would I have the house, the kids, the successful husband who actually loved me? Or would I have destroyed that life too, the way I destroyed everything good that's ever happened to me? The truth is, I turned a sweet, loving boy into a player who broke hearts across campus before he found someone who deserved him. I taught him that love wasn't enough, that devotion was worthless, that nice guys finish last. And he learned the lesson so well that he became exactly the kind of man I'd always wanted. Confident, distant, taking what he wanted without apology. The irony is perfect. I created the very thing I desired, then lost it because I'd proven I didn't deserve it. Sometimes, late at night in this cramped apartment, I'd dream about that weekend when I confessed to cheating. In the dream, Brendan doesn't forgive me. He walks out immediately, maintains his dignity, finds happiness without having to transform himself into something harder and colder. In the dream, I learned my lesson at 21 instead of spending the next 2 decades repeating the same mistakes. But that's not what happened. What happened is that I broke something in him, and he rebuilt himself into someone I couldn't break again. He became successful not because of me, but in spite of me. Found love with someone who appreciated the very qualities I'd mocked and taken for granted. My phone buzzes. Another message on a dating app from another nice guy who seems devoted and stable and boring. 6 months ago, I would have ignored him, holding out for someone more exciting. But I'm 44, living alone, teaching spin classes to women half my age who have their whole lives ahead of them. Maybe it's time to settle for nice. Maybe it's time to appreciate devotion instead of scorning it. Maybe it's time to stop chasing the Graham Mitchells of the world and accept a Robert type who'll take care of me. Or maybe it's too late for any of that. Maybe you only get so many chances to recognize a good thing, and I used all mine up before I turned 30. Maybe this is just what life looks like when you spend decades mistaking drama for passion, confusing stability with boredom, teaching good men that being good isn't enough. I closed the dating app without responding. What would be the point? Even if I found another Brendan, the original sweet version who'd bring me flowers and remember my coffee order, I'd just destroy him too. It's what I do. It's who I am. The rain keeps falling outside my window, and somewhere in Austin, Brendan is probably having dinner with his family, helping his kids with homework, planning weekend activities, looking at his wife with the same devotion he once showed me. Except now it's reciprocated. Now it's valued. Now it's enough. I taught him well. Too well. The nice guy learned to stop being nice, and the girl who didn't appreciate him learned too late what she'd lost. If that's not poetic justice, I don't know what is. The champagne I'm drinking is cheap. Nothing like the bottles Graham used to order to impress his clients. Nothing like what Brendan probably serves at his dinner parties now. But it'll do for tonight, for drowning out the memories and the regret and the knowledge that every choice I've made for 23 years can be traced back to that summer afternoon in Graham Mitchell's office. One moment of weakness, one thrill-seeking decision, one betrayal that set everything in motion. They say nice guys finish last, but that's not true. Nice guys learn, adapt, evolve. They become better versions of themselves and find better women who appreciate them. It's the women like me who finish last, alone in cramped apartments, dreaming of do-overs that will never come, creating the very monsters we claim we want to tame. I lift my glass in a mock toast to the empty room. Here's to Brendan Holbrook, the nice guy who learned not to be. Here's to his wife, who got the man I was too stupid to value. Here's to 23 years of consequences for one afternoon of selfish choices. And here's to tomorrow, when I'll wake up in this same apartment, go to the same gym, teach the same classes, and pretend I'm not haunted by the ghost of who I could have been if I'd just been smart enough to love the boy who loved me first. The rain stops eventually, but the regret never does. That's the real karma, isn't it? Not some dramatic downfall or public humiliation, just this quiet, persistent ache of knowing you had everything and threw it away for nothing. Of teaching someone to be exactly what you wanted, then watching them give it to someone else. Somewhere in Austin, Brendan Holbrook is living his best life. The nerdy computer science major who used to worship me is now everything I wanted him to be, plus everything I was too shallow to appreciate. He learned the lesson I taught him and used it to build something beautiful with someone who deserved him. And me? I'm exactly where I put myself. No victim of circumstance, no unfair twist of fate. Just a woman who spent 23 years chasing what she thought she wanted, only to realize she'd had it all along. The empty apartment echoes with possibilities that died in a Lawton engineering firm on a summer afternoon in 1991. But at least I know the truth now. At least I can admit what I've spent more than 2 decades denying. I didn't deserve him then. I don't deserve him now. And the saddest part is, I probably never will.